Is it a great performance basketball shoe? Yes. Is it worth $200? That depends on you, but for me personally, I don't think so. What's up and welcome back to another WearTesters performance review. My name is Alan and today we're taking a look at the Jordan 38 basketball shoes. This has been my favorite out of all the Jordan brand basketball shoes this year. Unfortunately, there are a couple of issues that might prevent it from being one of the unanimous favorites this year. When it comes to the traction of the shoe, the good thing is that it performed really well on any court that I played in. The bad thing is that there was an outsole separation issue with it. So like I said, the traction performance of this shoe was excellent in my personal experience, regardless of the court condition. The court was very dusty the first time I played with these shoes, and it was just very tacky and grippy from the get-go. It remained to be like that for the rest of my testing period with the shoe. This translucent outsole has sort of a modified herringbone traction pattern, but what really matters is the rubber compound, and this translucent rubber compound is one of the best I've tested so far. I would put it up there with the Puma All Pro Nitro that is also from this year. When I'm comparing it directly to the Luka 2s that I recently reviewed, this translucent outsole was much better because it was grippier and it handled dust much better. I found myself wiping less with this shoe compared to that shoe. After about 6 hours of playing time with this shoe, I noticed some outsole separation already on the medial side. You could see these V cutouts right here. It's just really these points right here. I think when I was stopping instantly or when I was dragging my feet, when I was moving, it would allow these points right here to easily just break off. That is unfortunate for a $200 shoe. If I was someone who had a limited budget and I could only get one pair of shoes, I would be pretty disappointed because again, the shoes are expensive and not everyone has the luxury to switch in between multiple pairs of shoes. There is also a solid outsole option, and what that can do for you is that it will be more durable in terms of fraying slower on at least the surface level. I would highly recommend that solid outsole option if you mainly play outdoors. That will also perform just as well as the translucent outsole if you play just indoors. But having said that, regardless of whether you get the translucent or solid outsole option, the outsole separation issue will still remain because it's less about the rubber compound and again more about how the outsole is constructed with these V cuts right here. So you might be asking, why do they have these V cuts? For aesthetic reasons, it highlights the X shape of the torsional plate that's under it. For performance and practical reasons, the V cuts here allows the shoe to flex a bit more in the forefoot. Forefoot flexibility is important for people who want a shoe that encourages natural foot movement. You know, some shoes can be super stiff throughout, and that can be uncomfortable for some people. When I was watching one of the Jordan brand videos, the designers expressed that their main inspiration for the shoe was Michael Jordan's turnaround jumper, and also specifically how his footwork operates when he pivots. A lot of pivoting depends on the forefoot part of your feet. Having this forefoot flexibility can be useful because it allows you to use less surface area of the outsole. Therefore, you're able to touch off of the ground and push off or change the position of your foot, whether it be you're in a triple threat position or you're in the post about to make a move and do a turnaround jumper or whatnot. These outriggers, it's always good to have shoes that have outriggers. Some shoes you can't tell if there's an outrigger or not. So having that outrigger is so underrated, but it is so important because just having those part of the outsoles jet out a little bit will allow you to have an extra feature of lateral stability. When you pair those outriggers with the flat wide base in the forefoot, what you're getting is a pretty stable experience, at least in the forefoot. The heel part is not as flat as the forefoot, but I don't think it will give you any instability problems. The cushion is comprised of a full-length Zoom Strobel unit as well as a full-length Cushlon 3.0 foam under it. It is a bouncy cushion setup. This is one of Nike's best cushion setups. What you get here is a very smooth and equally distributed cushion setup. What you feel in the forefoot is what you'll mostly feel in the heel too. Last year's model was more of a divided cushion setup. It was very bouncy up front and stiffer in the back. That type of cushion setup doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It's just a matter of preference and what you like in your setup. I don't have a personal preference. I go back and forth, but on some days I just prefer a shoe that feels pretty equal throughout, and that is what you'll get with this shoe. Even though this is a bouncy cushion setup, it's still going to provide you just enough court feel. The forefoot is lower, but not that much lower. So if you want a shoe that has minimal offset, this can be a good feature for you. I don't know the specific scientific differences between Cushlon and Cushlon 3.0, but what I can tell you is that with this cushion setup, I didn't have a painful break-in period. In other shoes before that I've played in where there is Zoom Strobel and Cushlon, they ended up feeling good afterwards, but there was a couple of days where they would feel like they were killing my feet. And with this shoe, thankfully, I didn't have that experience. We have this torsional plate, not in the middle, but it is centralized here in the forefoot area of the shoe. That goes in line again with the focus of the design, which is the turnaround jumper of Michael Jordan and how he pivots. Having that torsional piece there in the forefoot is going to add a little extra pop and propulsion to your step. So that is supposed to ideally allow you to make rapid movements again off of the triple threat position when you're pivoting and changing your foot's movements in there. And it actually wraps around all the way to the lateral and medial sides of the shoe. In terms of the torsional rigidity of the shoe, midfoot section of the shoe is pretty stiff, so that is good. And I think the large torsional pieces here on the side is what's helping with that torsional rigidity. These forefoot pieces up front didn't dig into my feet or anything at all, so I'm very happy about that. Unfortunately, some people have expressed that they felt some pain from these bigger pieces right here. I thankfully didn't have that experience. But I think what also helped me is that I moved up half a size at least. I would agree with Chris's initial review. I think going true to size will work best for most people. These netted areas right here allows the shoe to expand more in there. Where the shoe feels pretty snug actually is in the back half of the shoe. These parts right here, that's where you feel the most tightness, and it really pulls your foot to the back of the shoe. It will start to break in the more that you play with it. For my own preferences, I went up at least half a size because I do like to wear my shoes with and without braces. I want that option. If you also wear braces and you have wider feet, going up half a size will help, but that's if you're okay with having more space in the toe box. From a side profile, it is a midfoot, but when you look at the back here, it is very low profile. Having that low profile in the heel, you're gonna feel more freedom of movement for your ankle, especially in your linear movements. But I think even for the lateral movements, you'll get a benefit of that. What you do get here is very thick pieces in the lateral and medial sides. That will give you the advantage of having a mid top. I do wish that the heel part of the shoe had more cushion. In the beginning when I was playing with these shoes, it felt like there was a bit of heel slippage, but once that cushion broke in, my heel was locked in. And what's also helping is this tongue. It is wide, it is double padded, and it has that U shape already. And having that U shape is key because that hugs your ankle very well. You don't want some unnecessary space between your ankle and the tongue. Sometimes that can be forgivable, but with this type of shoe, it's even more imperative because that heel part of the shoe is very low profile. So it's kind of flipped this way now. In some other shoes, you'll have a tongue that is very thin, but then you'll have the heel part of the shoe be very thick. The only thing that I wish the tongue had is a lace lock here in the middle top of it. I think if there was a lace lock there, it would prevent the tongue from moving around too much once the lace pressure kind of softened up. Once the lace pressure loosened up, the tongue would start to move. So that's why I felt the need to retie my shoes and retie them tight. Even if you tie these shoes very tightly, you won't feel an uncomfortable lace pressure on top of your foot because the tongue is nicely padded. In terms of the materials of the shoe, it is supportive in the right parts, and it is also a very breathable shoe. You have this synthetic leather right here that is pretty soft, so it's nice on my toes. I didn't feel any irritation from that, so that is always good. This netting material right here is nice for breathability reasons. You also have a lot of holes on the tongue, so this is gonna be a very breathable shoe for the most part. In terms of weight, it's actually technically lighter or just as light as last year's model. The weight distribution is what's probably going to make it feel like it's a heavier shoe than last year's model, since last year's model was mostly lino weave. It feels more substantial on top of your foot, especially in this area right here. I also like that the interior of the shoe itself is very smooth. It's very comfortable, because in last year's model, one of my major concerns was, some weird stitching inside, and that caused some irritation to my midfoot. And with this shoe, I didn't feel any of that. That is about it for my performance review of the Air Jordan 38 basketball shoes. I really enjoyed playing with these shoes. The only real problem I had was that the outsole would separate. Again, that didn't really affect my performance at all, but I'm just really disappointed that it was doing that already after just about 5 to 6 hours of play. As always, the most important part is to use your shoes and have fun playing basketball out there. My name is Alan, and I'll see you again on the next performance review. Peace.